This is an opinion piece, so it's a little different than my normal fare. I am going to be talking entirely off the cuff. There is no scripting there is a little bit of a plan here, but there's no scripting or preparation beyond just what's in my thoughts and in my heart at the moment. So one thing I've noticed in the recent news is that it'll be tomorrow as of this recording, today by the time it's actually being posted, there are a group of Republicans that are joining with the Heritage Foundation to meet with allies of Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban to discuss Ukraine aid, specifically cutting off that Ukraine aid. Now, this puzzles me from a bunch of perspectives. Number one, Viktor Orban's pretty clearly an autocrat, bordering on a dictator, and absolutely does not hold any of the values that I espouse to heart. He claims to be a conservative, but I have to ask, conserve what? And from there, I've got to start with, what do I believe? What is a conservative? In my opinion, in the definition of the United States, a conservative is one who wants to conserve and preserve the Constitution of this country and the principles on which it is founded, as envisioned by the Founding Fathers. Yes, there can be growth, there can be changes based on the changing needs of a modern nation. That is the reason that there is the ability to put an amendment to the Constitution. The Founding Fathers did not believe they were all-knowing and all-seeing. Instead, they put in place a foundational set of principles that I believe were inspired of God, that are designed this government in a way that is supposed to be hard to destroy and resilient in the methods of being responsive to the people, and also to generally find right and righteous ways to accomplish the things that need to be done. I believe that was meant for a limited role for a federal government with a larger role for a state government. But in all cases, the actual sovereigns of this nation are the people, the individual, the person in the voting box, not the person in the presidency, not the person in Congress, not the Supreme Court. They are to provide ways for the right things to come forward, not be the sovereigns of this nation. They're not our leaders in that sense. They should be our public servants. So that's a kind of a fundamental start there. I also kind of tie in with the thoughts of Ronald Reagan, in that a powerful United States can be a powerful force for good in the world, that a powerful United States keeps the forces of evil at bay, keeps communism at bay, keeps dictatorships at bay, whereas a weak United States results in conflicts rising up around the world as these dictators, as these communists, as these fascists realize that they can take power and take property from their neighbors who do not have the support of the United States. So that's kind of my fundamental starting basis, where I start from, that government is important, but it is a servant of the people and not a servant unto itself. That leadership should be in the form of serving the people, and that the government should be doing, especially the federal government, should be doing the minimum amount that is required to accomplish its core necessary tasks of protecting the nation and providing for the common welfare. That does not mean I'm a welfare person. I'm just saying providing so that the opportunities to progress life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness can be accomplished in the United States. So that is my perspective. That said, there is a lot going on. So what is the Heritage Foundation, and why am I so concerned? Well, the Heritage Foundation started way back after the Ronald Reagan years. It was a bunch of ex-Ronald Reagan cabinet members that made up this think tank that generally pursued policies and put out papers supporting the idea that the U.S. being strong is what ended Russia, well, the Soviet Union, and resulted in the fall of the Iron Curtain, that resulted in all of the dictators of the world realizing that the U.S. would not stand idly by and just allow them to oppress people outside of their countries. Obviously, there's some limits to that, and that's a lot of stuff right there in to start with. But that was kind of the idea behind this Reagan era think tank that progressed through the years, staying with that conservative set of ideals of peace through strength, of being able to direct the world in ways that are not just good for the United States, but good for the world as a whole. And as the world as a whole was better, the United States would be better for it. So fast forward to the mid-2010s. The Heritage Foundation was bumping into some financing problems, as I understand it. So they started casting a wide net looking for dollars. And so they signed a little bit of a deal with the Danube Institute. Now, this is a group that purports to be conservative out of Hungary. And there was some money exchanging hands, and the two were working together. And all of a sudden, the Heritage Institute stopped being a Reagan-esque think tank and started thinking more like an autocratic Hungarian instead. Isolationist, absolutely basically preventing the United States from actually having a force for good in the world. And that was their position in support of Vladimir Putin and this Hungarian Danube Institute that they were now allied with. Viktor Orban is also heavily tied in with this Danube Institute. And Viktor Orban, if you've been watching his recent maneuvers, has gotten more autocratic, has been very much an ally of Vladimir Putin, and has been doing the Kremlin's bidding rather than looking at the things that would be best for his people, which is where the whole situation starts getting really sticky. So Viktor Orban has been doing all these things that have been more for Vladimir Putin. So the Danube Institute, therefore, has been doing things that have been more for Vladimir Putin and communism and that whole set of power structures there. And so Heritage, which is allied with the Danube Institute, is now, instead of being all about peace through strength, is now doing the opposite. It's isolationist. It's basically toting the Kremlin's water. They're the Kremlin's water boy in Washington, D.C. at this point. So that is the Heritage Foundation. I'm certain they will be unhappy with that description in all way, shape, or form, so expect there to be some real nasty comments about that. Please do not engage them in that regard, and please also do your own research in this matter. I've done a fair amount of research, but I'm always open to having my mind changed. So this isolationist bent is a lot of more, they call it Trumpian, but I have a question. Which came first, the chicken or the egg? And I think that Trump was not the chicken, he was the egg. I think the Heritage Institute and things like it were creating the environment that allowed a more pro-Kremlin approach by Donald Trump, or a set of principles that would align more with what the Kremlin wanted instead of what would be the best for the United States. That's not to say I think that Donald Trump doesn't have what he considers the best of intentions for the United States. I have a lot of debates I could have about that. I think that that he believes he is doing the right thing for the United States. The America First, actually, a lot of the things there I agree with. I do believe that we should be building a more firm and secure southern border because there are too many smugglers and illegal activities going on through that southern border, that our immigration should be through legal means and should not be this willy-nilly wide open doors situation. I also believe that our nation does need to be stronger and more capable, and that is a lot of what has been going on. However, unlike these people, I also believe that our nation has to be engaged on the world stage, because there is no point in being the good guy if you never will face the bad guy. And that's the situation we're bumping into, is we're running away from the bad guy instead of engaging them directly. So, Heritage Foundation, Danube Institute, Viktor Orban, pro-Russian, voila, that's where we're at. Let's move forward a little bit, though. Now we've got a situation where we have a group of Republicans and some Democrats, let's cut to the chase on that are carrying out activities that are not in line with this idea that the U.S. can be a force for good in the world. In fact, a lot of this from the Democrat side is coming about because of the Israel-Hamas war rather than the Ukraine war. either way, you come to the same end result, where the idea is that the U.S. is not a force for good on the world stage, whether it's Ukraine or the Israel-Hamas war. These people believe that the U.S. does harm and not good. This group of Republicans is now meeting with Hungary's Viktor Orban, well, the people that are allied with him at the Heritage Foundation, and trying to put together a policy that takes the U.S. out of being that force for good. And that really bothers me. We committed a long time ago to be that force for good for Ukraine, at least, and of course to the NATO countries. Now, let's cut to the chase. Donald Trump has, in fact, criticized some of the NATO countries for not providing their 2% required spending of GDP on their national defense. And up until Donald Trump left office, NATO was pretty much falling apart because of this situation. The idea that it was caused or precipitated by Donald Trump is absolutely wrong. It was caused and precipitated by nations that had spent too long at peace and no longer had the motivation to defend themselves, or more accurately, they no longer thought they were under any threat. Unfortunately for them, the threat is ever present. So they were not keeping up with their commitments. That's a positive mark for Donald Trump. Now, as the threat has become more clear, of Russia trying to go through Ukraine and get to Transnistria and possibly tie in with Orban's Hungary and possibly maybe work on the Baltic states and maybe take a little bit of Poland and all these things. The more that this has become clear, these nations have stepped up to the plate. There's, I believe it's Poland is almost at 4% of their GDP, spend it on their defense. Other nations have gotten up to the 2%, 2.5%, even 3%. So it looks like when the wolf is finally at the gates, these countries have finally realized they have to step up to the plate, and now NATO is stronger than ever before as an alliance, because these countries are working together. Still, there is the problem, the wolf in sheep's clothing, that is Viktor Orban. He's been pro-Putin for years now. He's always tried to present himself as kind of a moderate, somebody who defends Christian ideals, except for he doesn't. And strangely enough, when the election time comes around, he says, oh no, I'm not all pro Vladimir Putin at all. Don't know where you even get that from. I mean, look at my opposition, who are all insane people who are rabidly pro-Putin. I am obviously the very much moderate here, the peacemaker. And then, of course, the election's over, and he starts basically shilling for Putin. And there's where the situation is really going to be a weak spot. As Viktor Orban and Hungary as a whole, understanding that's not the people of Hungary, deal with this situation, they're weakening NATO as well, meaning that all of these things are going to tie together. And if the U.S. was the strong partner, it would be a clear, no questions asked situation where Hungary would have no leg to stand on. As it is, when the U.S. is acting weak or being weak, it allows these types of autocrats to start agitating to get some additional things. For instance, it is rumored, admittedly this is a rumor, so don't take it at face value just yet, but it's rumored that Viktor Orban cut a deal to get a region of Ukraine if the Russians could take the whole thing. And that seems to be where he's coming from and why he's allied with Vladimir Putin, hoping to get some kind of a benefit for him and for Hungary, though a benefit of conquest, not a benefit of working together. So somebody who wants both the U.S. to be strong, to have good, secure borders, and yet to be a force for good on the world stage, where exactly am I supposed to go? On the one hand, you have a group that is supposedly spouting the right words, but their actions tell me that they're incapable of carrying out the proper actions and the proper works to be able to support that position. On the other side, there's people that are absolutely saying things that are against my principles. And yet they are people that are capable of executing well on the type of thing that we're discussing. It amazes me that I have been left in this position as a longtime Republican, that to be looking at this situation as it is and being forced to pick between correct position and woefully awful execution, and wrong position, hoping that maybe, just maybe, there could be a way to still swing it through using the courts or legislation. I just don't know what more to say about that. But in the end, I am praying hard to determine exactly what my course will be in the future. But what is the course of the United States? What happens if they don't rise to the occasion? In fact, a year and a half ago, there was a great opportunity for the U.S. to rise to the occasion that would have resulted in this whole situation being nothing, literally nothing. And the odds are that all these other dictators around the world would not be so emboldened today if a year and a half ago the United States had put its foot down and said no. And by that I mean the moment we decided to provide actual lethal assistance, providing it in spades, in large, enormous, war-winning quantities, spinning up our economy to provide for the defense of this nation and for the defense of Ukraine, because it is the nation that was being attacked. The schoolyard bully does not stop until he is stopped by his victim and whatever allies that victim might have. Until that schoolyard bully is knocked back and punched down and told that he will not, his bullying will not be tolerated anymore, he will continue to escalate. He'll steal the lunch money. The next day he'll steal the lunch money and he'll steal your book bag. The next day he'll steal your lunch money, your book bag, and your bicycle. The next day he'll steal your lunch money, your book bag, your bicycle, and then beat you up, etc. This is how bullies have worked through all of eternity, as far as I've been able to see. And yet, if you stand up to the bully one time, that's enough to knock them back. And now they know they cannot force you as an individual to bow to their whims, to let him steal your lunch money, to do any of these things. Vladimir Putin, Viktor Orban, Kim Jong-un, and now the Venezuelan president, whose name is escaping me right now, have all started to do these types of things in conjunction with Iran, I might add, the mullahs of Iran. So we've got basically 5 dictatorships or autocrats that are all making noises that look like they're trying to make moves on their neighbors. I'm not even including Azerbaijan and Armenia, or the situation, I think it's in the Congo, or the uprisings in Africa. These are all things that have happened because a year and a half ago, there was not a strong, capable, and valid defense that said, no, not one step further. In fact, you go back to your own country and you leave it alone, because the U.S. was not strong, was not a world leader. We made the right noises and then we didn't deliver. And now Russia's spinning up its economy. They have managed to improve their overall production. They're managing to bypass sanctions. And even if they can't produce a great deal of high-tech goods, that still doesn't stop them from producing low-tech tanks and simple planes and simple dumb rockets and simple bombs. They don't need high-tech if they're just going to throw mass equipment at Ukraine until they win. A year and a half ago, we could have stopped this with a minimal investment. And every day delayed is resulting in that cost getting higher and higher and higher. And at some point in time, a NATO country will get bombed, and there will be U.S. troops in that country that are going to have to go to war to defend it. There will be a world war that will see untold amounts of carnage. All because the U.S. was not strong. Which brings me back to, why are we working with Viktor Orban? Why are the Republicans, spouting Kremlin talking points? And I hate to say it that way, because there are a lot of Republicans that are 100% capable people who do not believe that this is the right path. They support Ukraine, or they support, really less support Ukraine and more support stopping Vladimir Putin, stopping the bully. Because that's kind of the kind of people we are. More in the mold of Reagan. More in the mold of the founding fathers, who stood up to the most powerful navy and military on the planet at the time and said, no more. We will not be oppressed. We will not go quietly into the night. We will fight for our freedoms here and no farther. And we're going to push it back until we have our place, our freedoms, and our country. So it's not just me here. What about other people? Former president of Ukraine, Leonid Kuchma, says that you can't rely on Vladimir Putin, that there is no peace talks that have worked. They have had multiple rounds of peace talks since 2014. They've had multiple agreements before that. They have talked with and signed documents with and tried to come to an agreement with Russia, and each and every time Russia has broken that agreement. In fact, if you look at it, how many agreements that between Russia and the U.S. does Russia still keep? They've already pulled out of the Nuclear START Treaty. There's all kinds of things that they're basically saying, you guys aren't the power anymore, and it's our turn. A new Cold War. So he says, Mr. Kuchma here says, the United States will lose face in front of the world if it refuses to support Ukraine. And Putin's invasion was facilitated by the mistakes of the West, which reacted poorly to other signs of Moscow's revisionist ambitions. Garry Kasparov, the formerly Russian chess star, you'd even say, says it's Western cowards posing as leaders and diplomats who keep talking about ceasefires and concessions to aggressors, Russia and Hamas, that the aggressors themselves reject completely. Stop trying to make dictators and terrorists happy. You can't unless you're dead. Defeat them. And journalist Jason J. Smart said, we cannot allow Russia to dictate the world's future. Make no mistake, I'm going to say this for myself here. Russia's goals are world domination. This whole idea that they want to take a little bite of Ukraine and say, oh, that's good, we're good to go. They have made it clear that their goals are Lisbon. Their goals are Alaska. Their goals are to spread Russia everywhere. They do not have any reason to stop unless we stop them. That doesn't mean we have to march into Russia. That does not mean that we have to go and blow up the Kremlin or anything like that. But once again, when the U.S. is in a position of strength, the world is a better place. And that's everything for today. Thank you for joining me. I'm glad you were here. If you found this opinion video, and it is my opinion, to be good, please hit me with that thumbs up. Subscribe if you'd like to see anything else in my very rough publishing schedule, which is very, very random. And absolutely hit me with a comment letting me know what you think. And let me know if you think I'm wrong. Tell me what I missed or messed up. Again, I am open to changing my opinion if the evidence is there. I just have researched this for a long time now, and I feel strongly that a strong U.S. can be a force for good throughout this world and stop the forces of evil from expanding. And that's everything. You have a good night. We'll see you on the next video.